a very beautiful community. It's lovely to find the more stable moment to be with you and discuss Putin's visit to Chechnya against the background of Ukraine's invasion into Kursk. And I'll give you a tiny health update at the end. Putin hadn't been since 2011, and he was reverential on this visit. And the thing that he said that stood out the most was when he stood over the grave of Ramzan Kadyrov's father, Ahmad Kadyrov, and said this was a very good man who loved his motherland, the small one, and the big one. He really loved his motherland. The big one and the small one. Putin was shy saying that. Shy, awkward, as he needed to add big to small and small to big. That's probably more interesting than anything I'll say in this video as an illustration of the Kremlin's relationship with Chechnya. Mr. Kadyrov has had some PR issues. He's, of course, generally in a dynamic of animosity with much of Russia's security state. And recently, the bad PR took at least a couple of forms. Mr. Aludinov, head of the Akhmat battalion, made a nuisance of himself on social media after the battalion failed to cross paths with the Ukrainian military in Kursk, having also a year earlier failed to intercept Mr. Prigozhin's mutiny, having got stuck in traffic. So it's consolidating for Mr. Kadyrov to have Putin over. He may have asked for Putin to extend his trip and come through Chechnya nicely. And it's helpful for Mr. Kadyrov to have something named after Mr. Putin and so on. But what about for Putin? What is this all about? It's partly about normalization. Notice how absent Putin has been, not just recently, but during the public health crisis and on many other occasions. So being present on a trip, in particular, away from the Kremlin, is an important image to get out there. There is another element to this, and that is demonstrate that Putin is above the fray. That's to say, lots of things might not be going to plan, but that's because faults occurred for which particular people must be at fault, and I'm sure in time Mr. Putin will find those people. So that's to say, it also is a demonstration of Mr. Putin's separation, right, from everything that occurs below him, from everything that occurs beneath the altitude of the legitimacy of the perceived legitimacy of this political institution that is Putin, which is the only institution in town with perceived legitimacy. Something else as important is Putin's myth as a counter-terrorism warrior who succeeds, with which he began his high-power career. And part of the symbolism of this visit links that myth with what Ukraine is doing in Kursk. I will do counter-terrorism on that stuff too, and I will succeed because I always succeed. And that is, of course, staggeringly self-destructive for any political actor who is interested in Russia's territorial sustenance and in Russia maintaining monopoly of organized violence in the medium term. But in the short term, Putin is trying to make this link despite the inevitable toxic consequences for his regime of what's happening, right? It's possible for the regime to normalize this now, and I've argued how dizzyingly possible it is to normalize it, including with the Russian population. But there is no doubt this is absolutely toxic for the regime in the medium term. I mean, you know, I am in Devon. If France controlled part of Devon, and we Brits just ignored that, this will have extraordinary toxic consequences for the polity. And there is something else. Putin wants men. He doesn't just want words, he wants men, and he wants men who can be put on the line. Perhaps he's prepared to offer something that is beyond my knowledge to Kadyrov, something public or indeed something semi-private in exchange. But now there's an important political principle. For all of their agreements and for all the history of their relationship, Mr. Putin and Mr. Kadyrov are going to be swayed by political contingency, inevitably. That's to say that no matter the history, when circumstances change, Mr. Kadyrov is capable of being a threat to the Kremlin when the Putin regime weakens. Moreover, the weaker the Putin regime, the less chances it will have to exercise control over the post-Kadyrov transition period. If Kadyrov happens to go earlier than Putin, although he looked a lot healthier this time round. Two quick announcements. In the next video, I want to talk to you about the Democratic National Convention, where a speech took place that is the best political speech in English of this decade. It hasn't been reported as such, but it was. And a quick health update. I have shared a tiny note in the community tab. If you want to learn more about people in your life who may have a chronic illness, how to understand them better, just a 90-second read. And for now, I just want to say that I'm a bit more stable and raise an interesting question that is really relevant to everybody, even those of you with wonderful, shining health. There is such a thing as being at ease in your body, being at home in your body. And of course, being at home in a body that is doing violent and volatile and unstable things is an interesting thing. There is also such a thing as being at home in your mind. And I'm grateful to feel at home in your mind. That gives me the capacity to hold others, as you can see. Here's the philosophical takeaway for today. Being at home in your mind is in many ways much like being at home in your body. I'm somewhat stealing this from a philosophical hero of mine, but I'll leave you with that and then lots of love.